Hi, my name is Danielle. I'm the astrological counselor behind Sparky Spirit Astrology, and I am back with another transit report. And this time it is about Uranus stationing direct after being retrograde for the last several months. And there's a couple different pieces to this interpretation. And before we get into that, I just want to give a reminder or share with you that I am a constellation-based astrologer, also called true Sidereal astrology. What this means is I interpret the stars a little bit differently than mainstream astrology. And if you're curious to know the difference, visit the video link in the description below. But really, the point of that is you may hear some things different from me than what else is out there in the astrological community. So I just like to state that. So kind of moving into this exciting cosmic shift. Yes, so this is a retrograde transit that I'm going to be describing, Uranus specifically. And what's even more significant about this shift is that Uranus is currently the last celestial body in the sky that is in retrograde. And so once Uranus makes this transition, which I will describe to you, then all planets are in direct moving motion. And that's significant for us collectively in terms of the frequency of how we are perceiving the other planets in their orbit. It's actually a very exciting thing. So I'm going to be describing a little bit of that in this interpretation today. So yeah, let me give you a little lay of the land of what we'll be talking about. The first thing I want to cover is the significance of, well, okay, what a retrograde is, kind of briefly what it is, as well as the significance of station direct and station retrograde days specifically in the cycle. And then we will be talking about Uranus, some astronomical facts about Uranus that help us learn how this frequency moves in our lives, and specifically when it shifts in the external world, how that might be mirrored internally. So we'll talk about Uranus, and then we'll conclude by talking about the significance of all the celestial bodies moving in forward motion from our perspective on Earth right now. So cool. Let's talk about retrograde. You know, probably even if you've dabbled in astrology or picked it up here and there, you've probably heard of the concept of retrograde. And it doesn't necessarily have the best reputation in astrology. Retrograde is normally described as like this awkward, mistakes, like not supposed to take action, like questioning yourself, like all this stuff kind of gets a bad reputation. But in reality, that is not the invitation of retrograde chapters. And I actually want to take a moment to describe to you physically what is happening in the sky when there's a retrograde chapter. And the best way that I have found to describe this is inviting you to visualize that you are driving on the road. It's probably happened before. You've been driving on the road and there's a bicyclist up ahead of you and you're catching up to the bicyclist, right? And there comes a point in this where you pass the bicyclist. And even though you both are moving forward, there's a moment in you passing that bicyclist where they look like they're moving backwards, because it's a difference in speed and location, because of where you're located and how fast you're going versus that bicyclist. There's this weird momentary perception, even though you know you're both going forward, that it looks like they're going backwards. And so that's a retrograde. That happens in the orbit of planets. Every single planet has a different orbital speed and duration, and depending on where we we are in our orbit compared to their orbit, who's moving faster. It's like we get these moments where it looks like that planet is like reversing through the which, from our perspective on Earth, is reversing through the zodiac. It is retracing. It's like going backwards. From our perspective, it looks like that planet just like covered that section of the sky, and then for a moment it now is like reversing over that section of the sky. And it is an invitation it is a pull inward. A retrograde energy is a pull inward, and it is our opportunity to focus, instead of what's going on outside, to focus more of what's going on inside. And this brings analysis, review, reflection, second guessing yourself, really wanting to like dig in and maybe look at things twice. And so this can produce a lot of those types of retrograde concepts that we hear about, where it's like, ooh, don't, like Mercury retrograde, don't sign a contract during Mercury retrograde, which I don't have that blanket statement that I share with people. I think we can sign contracts during Mercury retrograde, and it's very much more about making sure you're really knowing what's going on in here, versus like being so externally focused like we tend to be. That's the invitation of a retrograde season. And every single planet can move retrograde, minus the moon, which is not a planet, or the sun, which is not a planet. So the star and the one satellite that orbits the Earth, these are the two, the star, the center of our solar system, the sun. These are the two celestial bodies that never move retrograde, which is very symbolic and fascinating in its own right. But every other planet does move retrograde. Mercury has a retrograde chapter typically 3 times out of the year. Pluto spends about 40% of its time in retrograde. So we have all different kinds of patterns between these depending on the planet. So I also would like to point out the significance of station retrograde days and station direct days, and how fun they've been for me to like really tune in to these few days, this day or few days depending on the planet, where on these days where the planet is either stationing retrograde or stationing direct, it actually appears to be frozen in the sky momentarily before it switches direction. So if we can imagine us like watching Uranus, like Uranus is moving. We could check where Uranus is in the sky every single night. We see Uranus moving. I'm going to do it this way. We see Uranus moving, and then all of a sudden when it starts to enter wherever our relationship is with Uranus, and we get this weird perception thing, before Uranus officially starts moving backwards, there's a day or two that it's stationed retrograde or stationed direct, which would be the opposite, which would be when it's finished and before it starts moving forward. On these parts of the cycle, that planet appears to be frozen in the sky. And this is actually a really, I don't want to say unnatural because it is natural, but a very different frequency than what we're used to. We are used to energy moving one way or the other. Things are happening either in or out, like something's moving, And so on these really, really powerful days where it's stationed either retrograde or direct, it's like frozen frequency, and like that mirroring for me, the invitation in that is it's more palpable to us because it's like stuck there. It's like we get caught on it almost, or that's the theory. Astrology is all very subtle energy that really does take your conscious awareness to tune into and find flow. Otherwise, like our awareness just goes to so many other places in life, and we miss this, and maybe we pick up one current because we're tied to it, but really there are patterns and shifts happening around us all the time. And like this is one I want to bring your awareness to on Friday, Saturday, this coming weekend. Like really, really see, I'm about to get into Uranus here. See if you can feel just any shift, anything at all around this Uranus energy. Because in theory, it is more palpable. It's like this, like, oh, it feels like something's like got stuck and got to move one way or the other. And And so that's the invitation. That's the fun experiment, the game of seeing astrology in real life. So, okay, let's talk about Uranus now. Uranus, I'm actually going to start, I'll start by the traditional astrology interpretations of Uranus traditionally. If you talk to most astrologers, you're going to describe Uranus as the rebel. As like sudden surprises, changes, kind of cataclysmic moments. Uranus is tied to the Tower card in tarot, which is kind of that energy that's here to tear things down. The purpose of Uranus energy is to destabilize things. It is not here to create structure. It is here to tear down structure. And I'm about to describe why this is so useful. So I want to actually point out two really fascinating astronomical facts about Uranus that help us understand and see the purpose of this frequency. So the one probably largest, most significant, unique quality about Uranus is that it has almost it's a 97.9 degree, 98 degree tilt to its axis, the axis that it rotates on. In the same way that the planet, Earth, Earth here, we have an axis that we rotate on, and that gives us the day and the night. Every 24 hours, it takes us to rotate on our axis, and we experience the sun for half the day and the night for half the day. And the Earth has about a 23 degree tilt to it. But Uranus, being that 98 degrees, is basically means it's lying it's perpendicular on its side, when quite honestly a lot of the other planets are on this more, I don't want to call it horizontal because it's not necessarily the directions in our solar system, but if we could imagine, most of the planets have an axis like this, where the planet's rotating around that. Uranus is like this. And it's I'm not doing it that way. And what's also really interesting about this fact that Uranus is tilted, they theorize that Uranus was hit by some large object in space that caused it to have this tilt. But it's a theory, we don't know. And because of this tilt to Uranus being perpendicular, so I'm gonna say, here's the sun over here. Actually, I'll probably have a diagram here, hopefully. If we could see the sun over here, and then so most planets are kind of like this, or maybe a little bit like that, and we rotate, and we get kind of an even division of night and day, Uranus is like this, and so Uranus rotates, if you could see that, the other kind of way. And when the sun, so what happens is the sun just blasts half of Uranus with its light and heat, and half of Uranus is blazing hot summer. And then the other side of Uranus that isn't facing the sun and is not rotating in that way is sent into literally a 21-year winter. Where it is in the dark for 21 years before the Uranus will shift poles, and then the other pole will be facing the sun, and then it's the other side is in the dark. So Uranus has the most extreme seasons out of any other celestial body here. We see the sun for, depending on the time of year and the season, we see the sun for about 12 hours, and then the darkness for about 12 hours every day. Well, Uranus sees the sun for 21 years, and then the other part is seeing the darkness for 21 years. And this is very extreme in its expression. And this just so illustrates your Uranian principles to me of following your heart. So the sun in astrology is heart consciousness. You are a universe all in yourself. You are a universe all in yourself. There are trillions of cells in your body. We count ourselves as a singular unit, right? I am Danielle. There's one of me. But in actuality, there's galaxies inside of Danielle. And so this is significant because if I were to look at you like a solar system, the sun is your heart. The sun is the heart, your heart that beats blood and warms your whole body. It's your heart consciousness. The photons and the heat from the sun is very symbolic of our heart's desires, of what fills us with life, of like why we came here, what the purpose to it all, our passion. That like gets us going in the morning. Ideally, when we're following our hearts, our life is filled with a lot of purpose and passion. And Uranus is here to teach us that through its radical pointing to the sun, to the heart. I don't care if everyone else is rotating this way. I'm going this way. And you can't tell me that that's not where the light's coming from. That is where the light is coming from for me. And this is a very individual journey. No one else is going to tell you about your heart besides you. Certainly not me. Tools can help you get there. That's my role, is to facilitate, to guide. But you are the only one who can know your heart. And this Uranus asks us to polarize. This concept of Uranus, of being the rebel, of really radically following our truth. What does where is our heart calling us? And Uranus gives us the courage to follow it, even when we have to stand up against our external environment. And that can be very challenging. The pressure to conform to society is hello Saturn. That's a Saturn frequency. Saturn is very much restriction. Uranus wants freedom. Uranus is a freedom-giving force. It says, no, I will not do that. That is not in alignment with me. And so that's not my truth. And I am here to follow that truth and to be able to stand up and tell you that I'm doing that. So that's a very, very Uranus principle. And in a way, without Uranus, we would I don't want to say without Uranus. I should say Uranus reflects this in us. But the purpose of this reflection of what Uranus is showing us is that you are not here to be normal. You are here to actually be very individual and very unique. And in pursuing your heart to the nth degree, will you find your inner genius? If we are giving our energy into this, my parents told me to be a lawyer, so I went to school and did all the things, now I'm a lawyer, but my heart is doesn't do anything for me, nothing. I actually despise it. I feel like I'm contributing to problems. What kind of life is that? I mean, it is a life for sure, not to poo-poo anyone's life at all, but there is this call to being a human that is purpose and passion, and we are not going to get there by following anyone else's instructions. Well, they can help us, but it has to resonate from your heart space, and if it doesn't, it's in your highest good to reject it. I personally believe that right now, collectively, us settling is the cause of a lot of problems, of us just tolerating things. That's not the way of Uranus. As clearly as Uranus is that force that gets just so much of your it is the one pointing to your heart. It is a frequency in you that is pointing to your heart, and it's going to realign you there. And it can be spicy, and it can say, and it is the force that is going to put its foot down and give us the courage to walk that path, and sometimes do it alone. Uranus and Aquarius Uranus is the modern ruler of Aquarius. And Aquarius is the zodiac that is spiritual water bearer, is really, really calling us into our humanity. And this is really to stop pretending that these systems are okay with you, or to stop pretending that the way this person is treating you is okay, or that these rules and boundaries that you may have agreed to at some point or maybe up for renegotiation because they're just not working for you anymore. Every time we deny our hearts what they desire, we are like dishonoring our soul. When we say, soul, I know that you have a deep desire to be an astrologer, but society just won't accept you, so sorry, we're not going to do it. And it's like you are telling yourself that your heart doesn't matter. And I personally think it's the most powerful force in the universe, in your universe. The sun is in our solar system. And so this is the principle of Uranus. It is to not be normal. It is actually to be yourself, which that cliche saying just like makes me like, anytime someone says that, I actually just want to punch you in the face. Like, be yourself. Like, what does that mean? Like, it's so cliche, but it's like in the truth of it, like, be yourself. And this can be really terrifying because it's super vulnerable. It's very vulnerable to stand up to your 9-to-5 job and say, like, I know that you offer me healthcare and a steady paycheck, but I'm gonna go be an astrologer instead. I'm just using myself as an example here. And like, it is super vulnerable to put yourself out there, to believe in yourself so much and what your heart is telling you so much that you're like all in. There is that essence to Uranus. It's either a yes or it's a no. And this ability to focus on the light. I don't care what's going on back there. I see this, and this is where I'm going. Whoever wants to wait back, goodbye. I know where I'm going. And it is this radical energy that calls us into making sudden changes. This is kind of the nature of Uranus, is like we kind of need the buildup to get to this breaking point. And that's why Uranus can sometimes really commonly be tied to surprises and unexpected changes and like all of a sudden destabilizing. Like you could encounter a Uranus force in someone else. Like, let's just say I own my own business. I have an employee and I'm just like moving along in my world, like planning for the future. Got 6 months. I got this employee here helping me. And then all of a sudden one day this employee comes in and they're like, listen, I quit. I can't do it anymore. Like I'm done. And, because they did the inner work of like, it's not working for me, and they leave, and I'm like, oh my God, I wasn't expecting that at all. But the truth is, for that person, they probably had a buildup, the wrestling with themselves of coming against that Uranus truth bringing force of, this is not in alignment with you. This is not the truth of who you are. You're contributing to the problem, or whatever that voice might feel like inside of you. We can see that in someone as a very sudden, like, whoa, where'd that come from? And for that person, it was actually an evolution of this breaking point of being like, I'm done putting my foot down. And likewise, you could be that force in someone else's life. And quite honestly, Uranus is here to tear down the things that are not working. So it's a real gift. But there is always this fear of the unknown that is going to bring up, which we tend to fear the unknown, but I invite you to maybe have faith in the unknown instead. That makes a lot of Uranus energy easier to work with, when we don't instantly assume something bad is going to happen, and we can maybe lay out a few scenarios where something good happens. Having faith in the unknown can help with that. So that is a little bit about Uranus. And the fact, okay, so when Uranus is in retrograde, we actually have kind of a weird spin on this. Like, instead of it maybe being so easy to follow your heart and take a stand, we're actually maybe called more into self-doubt, into pausing before we maybe do something radical. Of saying, like, is this really the best thing for me? Like, is this in alignment or is it not? Like, what is my heart telling me? Like, where is it? The retrograde energy for Uranus is this kind of pulling inward, and it can even make us a little bit more, or like there could be just a bigger opportunity for cooperation and collaboration. That could also mean like fitting in, wanting to just fit in, keeping yourself in the status quo. And then when Uranus starts moving direct, we have this call outward of like our inner truth, rebel, radical, I'm gonna do this thing and follow my heart kind of energy. So that's really exciting. That's what's going to be taking place this Friday and Saturday. This direct, moving direct. It's like we just went through this like several month-long chapter where Uranus was kind of like, oh, hold on a second. Maybe just wait, let me think about that. Am I really? Is that what I want? And I don't know if any of you have been feeling a build of like, okay, I'm ready, let's go. This like Uranus shift could be this like final kind of thread that's like holding you back, and now you're like, full motion, let's go. And like that kind of leads me into this chapter that Uranus is officially like moving us into, and that is the fact that all of these celestial bodies will be in forward motion, meaning that there will be no frequency mirrored inside of you that is going to be like calling you back in. I mean, it doesn't mean depending on your natal chart, I actually should say, doesn't mean that experience won't be there. But what it does mean is that the cosmic currents are really supportive of taking forward action, of working up the courage to have that conversation, to sign up for that new program, to learn the new skill, to do this thing that you've always wanted to do, to break off a relationship or even start one. To work up the courage to find this alignment in like, you know what, I actually really do want to pursue this, or this needs to end. And so if you've been like kind of feeling on the edge of this like maybe new chapter, like we're walking through these doors, like this kind of Uranus move was really going to be like, they're open. And this like, to kind of give you guys all a little summary, like we went through a beast of a retrograde season in 2023, and I say that because Venus was retrograde, and she only stations retrograde every 18 months, one of the least common celestial bodies to station retrograde. And so we had a Venus retrograde. There was like the last 6 months of last year was a lot of energy pulling inward. It was a lot of the inward motion. And now we've been slowly getting all the planets moving direct, and Uranus is the last one. So up until we have a Mercury retrograde in March, I believe. Don't know the exact dates off the top of my head. So there's one little retrograde period coming up in March, but none. We're like forward motion until May. So like kind of think of that. And even Uranus conjuncts Jupiter in April. Anyways, I just want to encourage you, if you are feeling the zest, the zing of let's go time, like run towards that heart, because that's really what I'm seeing reflected in the skies. And I'm always curious to know, like what your experience is. Astrology is an experiment for me. I always like to treat it like a hypothesis. Like, this is what I'm gonna do, put it in the equation. Like, I think this is what's gonna happen. But like, what we choose to do with the frequency is our own. I will never be able to predict that or know what that will be. Our choice, our free will is always a component here, which is why I like to actually share these shifts and point them out, because when you're aware of them, you can make different decisions. And that's what I desire from this information. I desire you to capitalize on this, and feel it and find that flow with this beautiful higher intelligent force that's around us and working in the world, or so I believe. Is here to support you. So that's really my goal here, and I always welcome any feedback. If like, no matter what it is data for Danielle to absorb. Did happen, was different in this way, was spot on, whatever it is. I love to hear your experience. So feel free to drop it in a comment in the chat. And finally, I'll just throw a little reminder out there that if you are feeling a tug and you're like, gosh, I want to know more about this energy in my life specifically, I want to know how it applies to me as an individual, I'm here to support you. I offer private sessions, star sessions, as well as personal recordings. So depending on how deep you want to go with me, you feel free to pick either of those options, and I would love to dive into this deeper for the wisdom it has for you specifically. All right, thanks for watching, and if you enjoy this type of astrological information, this is something I report on or will be reporting on consistently in the future, so feel free to subscribe to stay updated. Thanks so much.